I cannot believe Donald Trump did what he did this morning to Mika. That is just insane to go after her this way and say what he said about, you know, it must be plastic surgery, she was bleeding on New Year's Eve, whatever.
It's
I'm
insane.
assuming that wasn't true.
It's insane, it's childish, it's petty.
Now, we've all, you've heard about it by now, but there's another angle to it that we want to talk about, and it's interesting because there's a very famous plastic surgeon who you have seen because he's the star of Botch, Terry Dubrow, who thinks that there's another side to this, that this is really also like body shaming. We got him...
All sorts of shaming.
All sorts of shaming. We got him today. Here's what he said.
As a plastic surgeon, I think it is akin to body shaming to be calling someone out for potential plastic surgery procedures that they may or may not have had. As the President of the United States, I'm really not in favor of someone talking about another person's looks. I don't think it's a matter of world or political importance. So I just think those are subjects that are personal, are better left alone, and not really, in my opinion, appropriate for a president to be talking about.
He's getting it from all sides in this one,
Listen, I'm telling you, if somebody said this on, like, at some event or outside Catch and someone said that to someone, we'd go like, God, that was really inappropriate. Especially not from the president.
Yeah, no.
And it's so much, it is so far flung, so off, there's no defense for it. Even people who defend Donald Trump on everything.
Well, let's take the one. Let's take the number one who did that, which is Kellyanne Conway, who has been masterful in some ways at taking whatever he says and kind of turning it and saying, well, here's why it's good.
Master spinning things.
So Colin, our intrepid cameraman in New York City, got her at the
in Washington, D.C.
Rayburn office building in D.C. today, and Kellyanne is just...
This is the first time I think I've seen her completely, she had nothing to say. And
it was like she was playing hot potato with
what's funnier is how all the different ways she tries to dodge.
So watch this.
President Trump tweeted about Mika Kelly leaving from a facelift. Is that because of the feud they've been having?
SK's law today, so that victims of illegal alien crimes can get some relief action.
So nothing about President Trump's tweet?
It's a bipartisan hug.
Okay. But Kellyanne, do you think he's going to get a lot of blowback from that tweet about Mika Brzezinski?
It's going to stay here, isn't it? I love Southern D.C.
Okay.
That is fantastic.
She literally went to, how's the weather?
That is fantastic.
How's the weather?
I mean, there's no way to defend the indefensible here. And it's really ironic also that a lot of the women, you know, surrounding Donald Trump have been critical of him in the past for his attacks on women. And now they're silent. Melania Trump has had an anti-cyberbullying campaign, and that's the issue that she wanted to take on as First Lady, but she's not bringing in.
Well, Melania Trump says that when he gets hit, he hits back 10 times as hard. That's not a great answer.
Yeah, Evan had the best line about that. He hits back below the belt, Evan said this morning.
Yeah, 10 times as hard.
Here's the situation. Really, this isn't about Donald Trump anymore, not in my opinion. Donald Trump has actually said things that are much worse than this. And he's acted in a much more immature way since he's been the president, in my opinion. This now has to be about the people that continuously support Donald Trump and make excuses for this type of behavior. He's lowering the standard of the presidency of the United States of America. There's no more debate about that. This is the leader of the free world that we have taking personal shots at someone like this. I beg anyone to defend it.
Yeah, but all we're doing there is we're just saying, look, I'm right. No, you're right. All right. To me, the bigger issue is this, that he knows what MSNBC does. He knows that they dislike him. He knows what he's getting. He knows it upsets him, and he knows he gets criticism. Why is he watching it? That's what I'm trying to understand.
That's the bigger issue, Harvey?
To me, I'm telling you, look.
The bigger issue in this situation is why is Trump watching MSNBC?
Bigger than why is somebody supporting him? Because then you're just going to get
No,
you're both
no. The bigger issue is, because it makes no sense. This is a smokescreen. There's something, he wanted everybody to talk about this for some reason. There's something else going on that he's trying to throw us off.
I think this is an issue.
I don't know that it's always so calculated, though.
I think this is an issue.
I think you're giving him way too much credit.
No, it is an issue of self-control, and that's what I'm raising.
Wait. And my point is,
hold on. It's an issue of self-control.
Exactly, it's a trigger button.
If he knows he can't handle it, by watching someone who's critical, why watch it?
Well,
I mean, it's going to go on with you or without you.
Well, then I would say you're both right, because then to Van's point, if you elected someone, if you wanted someone in the White House who has no self-control,
wait.
I think he's proven that, though.
No, I understand that.
The president
has
of
no
the United States can't control. He has an impulse control problem.
He had proven this before he had been elected.
I get it, but you guys, Harvey, think about what you just said. Like, you cannot have a guy in the White House that doesn't have any control.
But here's the thing, Van. A, you do, and B, you can't do anything about it.
That's not true.
Yes, it is.
You can't,
because
impeach him for it. You can't impeach him.
That's not an impeachable defense.
You can. Like,
Self-control is not an impeachable defense.
I get it, but what we can do, first of all, never in American history has "you can't do anything about it" been a sufficient response to anything I have a problem with in America. By the way, and it's not going to start today.
Well, but hold on. The one thing you can do for the next 4 years is impeach him.
What you can do right now, first of all, you can impeach him. We're not there yet, but you could. Right. What we can do as Americans is voice and mobilize our displeasure at the president and at anyone that supports the type of rhetoric that's coming out of Washington.
100%.
Right, that's what we're going to do.
But what I'm saying is, look, here's...
That won't get him out of office, and you should do those things, Van, you're right.
And by the way,
so what the hell are we talking about?
There is one other thing. 40% of the people, 40% of the people are going to support Donald Trump no matter what. 40% of the people...
And those people have to be called in front of the congregation. And people that are supporting this have to be, not in an objective way, like I have this point of view and you have this point of view. This is objectively wrong, and we have to be stopped.
And what I'm saying to you is you've got a group that's not going to move. You got another group that's not going to move. So you're really playing to 15 or 20%.
No, but I think that group that the 40% that supports him, even they are saying,
come on,
even I've heard.
I think you're right.
People this morning
I think you're right. But will they oppose him because of this? That's the question. And I think you're playing to 20% of the people.
Here's the fact of the matter is. The fact of the matter is, when Obama was in office and he was droning people and things like that were happening, there were definitely people on the left, myself included, that said, yo, these things are wrong. Now, had we gone down a path of over and over and over again, the president putting forth policies and putting forth ideas that we felt like were bad to this union, I think it would have been a little different. We can't have a religious leader in the White House. He's a political leader, and people have to be willing to criticize him.
Oh, no, they should. Right. Oh, no, they absolutely should. The issue is, will they ultimately support him? I think that's the end game here.
Well, then maybe you take that 20% that's in the middle, maybe you take some of that 20% and put them on the other side.
But that's what I'm saying is those people are going to decide ultimately, but they're probably going to decide it in 3.5 years unless something else comes up. But somebody's, personality, lack of control or everything else, look, even Kellyanne Conway, couldn't defend it. So nobody's defending. Have you heard really anybody defend this?
But saying there's nothing you can do about it is kind of a Harvey. Come on.
Well, what I'm saying is you can't get him.
Your point was you can't get him out of office for this, but you just stay vigil. There'll be something eventually.
Hey guys, this is Donald from St. Louis, Missouri. The point we are now, Barack Obama was voted president, and we had hope. The country was like, wow, there's hope in this country that we got a black man as president. Donald Trump made us realize, well, anybody can be president. Con men, anybody.
I don't know if that's a good thing, though. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how that cuts.
Make sure to subscribe to TMZ Live to keep up to date on the latest entertainment news.
And if you want to keep watching, click on one of these videos right now.